Good Saturday, my friends and relations. It's been a while. The Cintiq was dusty. Tom has a Panera Bread coffee. It's hazelnut, and I will be drawing today. What we're going to be working on is a multi-figure composition. I went to Connecticut recently, my home state, to investigate the hiking trails and waterways around where I grew up. And I was inspired by an old growth hemlock forest. We're going to try to draw something kind of witchy in this hemlock forest. Here are some studies I've been doing recently to get back into the swing of things. We have some portraits drawn from Photoshop, uh, I should say, from Facebook images drawn in Photoshop, corrected for me. So welcome, welcome. Hello, Joe. Thanks for stopping in to the Tomcast. Thanks for hopping in. We're gonna draw. Hey, there's you right there. Look at that. How interesting. There you are. How do I sound? I'm having some problems with this mic when I play games with my friend Steve. Where's my pen? Can't draw without a pen. Welcome, Cintiq pen. Purple in the background for the Joe. Multi-figure composition. Well, you first got to know how to draw a figure. We're going to use stick figures. The idea in my head is there's going to be some kind of Polshan cauldron. There's like a cave, enclave kind of place, and there's going to be this old growth hemlock forest. And we're going to have a couple characters arrayed here. I want to have maybe one here, figure here, figure here, and then maybe a tall figure. So maybe a four, like a coven of witchy type people. So just by quickly drawing some oval shapes for the faces and some rectangular lumpy shapes, we can start to work on a composition. I learned this from Taylor Fisher, the ratios of small, medium, and large. Like small item, medium item, large item. And you can create compositions by thinking about these rules of three: small, medium, large. Joe says it sounds all right. Joe says this reminds me of a witchy version of the apocalyptic horseman composition. Very good. Thank you, Joe. Yes, I do recall that. And it does have that kind of vibe. So the horseman, I don't know if I have an image of that on my computer, but we'll have to find that later. Let's tilt this up just a little bit. Just tilt the camera up just a little bit. That's a little better. So you can see me working and you can see the image. So compositionally, it's my first pass. We have maybe something up here. The eye comes down across, and we have this like zigzag into the cauldron, and that's not bad. Let's hold on to this layer or this sketch, and let's create another one just to try something a little bit different. I'm going to try to do 5 to work on the composition. So let's fill in another background. So cauldron, what if we put the cauldron offside the left side? What if we have a composition where coming from the height and then looking down, we have character, the smallest character is near the cauldron and the fire, and there is a tree to balance out. There's some couple old trees. Maybe a character leaning over. This reminds me of the improv study, which is like standing, sitting, lying down. It's a drill for improvisational actors to pay attention to their fellow actors. Instead of just staying entirely in your own head, reacting to what the other people are doing. So, don't have to think too much about pose, but just a little bit. So this reminds me of some history type paintings where the composition is relatively flat, like in the medieval and pre-enlightenment world. Linear, maybe like a tapestry kind of painting, allegory. Don't really know what's happening exactly, but we have some Renaissance poses. We don't want to stack things directly in front of each other. We want to kind of offset and layer. Let's try the other way too. Let's give another one. So this angle, maybe let's have more of a 3/4 view. Cauldron is in the lower third. Lowest figure on the ground with the knee up maybe. Your lines aren't going to be perfect in the brainstorming phase. They're just not. But you can explore with just a few lines, being loose. Joe says it's on your Facebook, I think, your drawing. Joe says, I like the two-headed person. Thanks, Joe. See, two-headed person is just an accident I had before, but maybe it would be an interesting character for this. That's not a, why not? Why not go with it? Two-headed character. Two-headed character in the background. Maybe twins. Another medium-sized character is bending over to put in an ingredient. To the cauldron. I kind of want to have some kind of device that this thing can be moved with. Getting into the spooky, the woods of New England have a very spooky vibe. And I wondered why. And I learned from going to the Mianus River Gorge that these old hemlock trees were present all over the Northeast and throughout the New World. Doesn't hemlock have a poison component to it? What if everyone was seeing ghosts and witches in the New England woods because there was a little bit of hemlock in all the water and the consumables? This character feels a little too large to me. A little too close to the other characters. What's great about drawing in Photoshop is using the lasso tool and just selecting an area of the drawing that you want to recompose. And then let's bring this two-headed character down to there. A two-headed character could mean literally or figuratively, too. It could be a bipolar or like multiple personality type consciousness, or it could be two individuals who think very similarly to each other. Think about the twins in Bioshock Infinite. I forget their names. They were an interesting time traveling quantum mechanical couple or siblings. I'm not really sure what they were. It was very curious what the nature of those characters were. I like that this goblin-like character in the front is very excited, very eager for the results of the potion. Maybe has a spoon ready to get into it. So this composition, you see, I'm starting to get more excited. The initial drawing was okay, but the more ideas I'm bringing to this, it's like every iteration. It's like every time you make maybe you like baking bread, and every time you make a loaf of bread, like Joe likes making really good bread, you try something a little bit different. You add another ingredient. You uh, apply a different philosophy or a different story. Joe's asking, did I play Elden Ring? No, I'm not a big fan of the Souls games because they seem way too hard. The art is beautiful. It looks like the character design and the monster design is stunning and interesting. And maybe that's what's getting me to think about these like potions and witchy type stuff is all the praise about Elden Ring in this mythical dark universe with magic and mystery. Thanks, Joe, for keeping me company on this lovely spring Saturday. So that we have our original sketch, just kind of plain Jane. Just a little bit of leaning in, kind of a boring composition. We have maybe the character closest and lowest to the ingredients are over here. To the cauldron. The cauldron's in the middle. Coven of witches and warlocks. Then we have the maybe Renaissance flat composition. Maybe these two are talking about the ingredient list. There's a conflict maybe happening between adding another powerful element to this potion. Ooh, maybe this thing needs a hook to be picked up. That'd be interesting. If this tall character, the bigger character, has a shepherd's hook, maybe that would be interesting. The shepherd's hook is a Christian image, but what if it's a condemned hook in this narrative? Joe says, feel like composition one would be about faces, but C3 would be about the action and scenery. I like both for different reasons. I don't understand what the typo is, but that's okay. So there's some kind of conversation happening. This individual has the hook for taking the cauldron off of the boil. Maybe this character is holding the book of spells or the book of potions. If you like Shakespeare, this feels a little Macbethian to me. Is it Macbeth or Hamlet with the witches? 3 witches you will meet. Joe says composition 1 versus composition 3 is what I was reflecting on. I still don't think I follow. but I like what you're saying. Three witches you will meet. I forget what band sings that song. I really like it though. It's not Appalachian Death Trap, I don't think. The first at twilight, the second at night, and the third at the end of the day. It's not Clutch. I do like some Clutch though. So I'm gonna go with just these three. What do we feel like? Uno, dos, tres. Drew! Welcome, my friend, to the coven of potion makers. What shall we choose? I think we should do one more. One more composition since Drew came in. So the idea is so cauldron left, cauldron right. Let's do cauldron. Would cauldron high make any sense? Maybe it's some kind of magical dual cauldron mix. Like one cauldron's being suspended in the sky, and then there's another one that's. Let's get really wild with it. Let's get really loose and really wild. And then there's going to be some. Let's add some real depth by adding a foreground character that we just see the back of, and this will frame in the imaging. Framing is when you have near foreground elements that aren't really resolved. They're typically dark, and they create a frame around the image that you're working on. So we'll have one wizard lifting using the force to lift the cauldron here. And then another couple faces. Adding various potions, and maybe there's a vase that this character is pouring in something here. And then this character is giving some kind of offering. Some little goat horns, devil horn type stuff. Joe likes one or two. Joe also says Macbeth has witches. And there is the paladin guard with the hook. It's a little more dynamic, having the foreground characters. Maybe this maybe this is the bard in the front. Why not have a bard? Bards are fun. And a cantor on the right. Maybe he has a little drum. That might be fun. A singer with a drum. So this one I'm getting kind of excited about because I have a little bit more characters in here. Instead of 4, I now have 6. But because they're up close, I don't have to, and they're going to be in the shadow, I don't have to fully render them all, so I'm not too overwhelmed. So I'm kind of excited about this one, but I know this is going to be the most amount of work. So let's take a look again. Uno, let's call it 1. Simple, easy, straightforward. This is going to be 4. This is the most chaotic. 2, linear, kind of boring. Tells a story, but I'm not very excited about it. 3, it's got some dimensionality because there's a foreground, middle ground, background. I'm also interested in the apparatus. It's a little bit more steampunky with the wrought iron. Crane type thing. It's a neat idea. Do I want to go with it? Joe likes 4 now. Drew says, I've always liked the cowboys sitting around the fire in the center look myself. Yes. I was watching True Grit not too long ago. Some really nice scenes out there. Out in the desert, you can just sleep out in the wilderness. There's not bugs, and there's very few animals and life and stuff. If you go like just sleep in the middle of the woods out here, you're gonna get bitten alive. All kinds of critters are gonna make nests up in your ear holes. All right, 4 seems to be this one feels the most storybook to me, but I also like it. So we just have a little bit more excitement going on here. So let's go with it. Let's create a new layer. Letter B likes the video today. Thanks, B. I think we'll start upper left and kind of come down. Joe says she's going to work on a puzzle. Awesome. Thanks for visiting, Joe. Not going to do a whole lot of talking today. Today is going to be more of a drawing stream. Joe says, I'm going to work on a puzzle since I never make puzzles ever. That is some heavy sarcasm to those who do not know of Joe and Puzzle Teeny Time, puzzle and cocktail stream on Twitch. It's got this wizardy kettle that's upside down. Another artist I knew in my grade school days is a ceramicist named John Pizzoli. Now, I like seeing his pottery art, and I don't know too much about pottery, but it is inspiring in its organic shape and the different glazes and colors. Anything could be a source for inspiration. So that's why it's important to get out and see things, see the world. Maybe a photo of something only gets you half of the way there. Actually seeing it and holding it and experiencing it in the context of the space is really what you need to feel to be inspired. The inspiration might come from bringing things through different domains. Something that is supposed to exist in one place and move it to one place where it doesn't exist and see what that juxtaposition gives to you. This is going to be a solemn character here. Who's giving some kind of offering. don't know what that offering exactly is. Something difficult to part with. Something that took a lot of work or a long time to make for one purpose, and then it's being given for a different one. I'm trying to think about how I want to lift this off the fire. I'm thinking some kind of four-spoke wheel holder. There's a way that the logs and the wood can be returned to underneath the cauldron to keep it hot, keep it boiling. Okay, let's go to the third character. A very different face. Maybe this face is closer. Let's go bigger. Somebody's a fiend for it. We have the close character, the drum. Oh, that's right. Why did I choose such a hard thing to draw? Something like that. I actually like this character, how it came out. Joe says someone next door is being evicted and I'm worried about them. Just a fun side fact. Nothing like a good eviction to shake up your Saturday. Pay your rent. Oh, the devil will have his collection. I personally don't believe in the devil. Doesn't mean he or she or it doesn't exist. Just I haven't seen any evidence that I pertain to put towards the devil. I like the metaphorical idea of the devil has gotten into somebody, the same way that tequila has gotten into somebody. The spirit Spirits. Three witches you will meet. God, I wish I remember what band that was. Hmm. Hmm. The Sword. That's what it is. Tres Brujas by The Sword. Yeah, I like that one. I'm going to put that on in the background. It's like I knew it was from a band that was really good, but not very popular. Joe says, I must have a higher mischief tolerance. Not in all things. Okay, I'm liking where this is going. Okay, so we got somebody wearing some goat horns over here. Looking like a Les Claypool type. That'd be so cool to hang out with Les Claypool. Kind of inspired also one of my artist friends, Jessica Drew Johnson, out on the West Coast. There's a bunch of these spiritual pagan kind of dress up things. I don't know if I like where these are wearing on the head. Joe says, personally, I like more Claypool. More Claypool. Hmm. Little message in me. move this so there's not any room for the legs right now. So I'm going to select this barred character and move him up and over to the side just a little bit. Let's add some spooky colors in here, huh? A couple more characters still to draw up. And it's probably a good time to save projects. Where is it? Just put on the desktop for now. The witches, potions, precious. Good time to save the files. Joe says more Claypool instead of less. I get it. More Claypool. It's pretty fantastic that magnificent man is still producing music and collaborating. He's the Elon Musk of music, if you will. Bouncing between project to project, from everything from Primus to covering Getty and 70s rock and roll to working with Sean Lennon and the Delirium to playing with Trey Anastasio. All kinds of good stuff. Collaborative projects with Metallica. It's a little more cartoonish than I was originally imagining for this project, but that's fine. You might have an idea in your head, and then you have what your body and your tools actually allows you to execute, and that's fine. Swordman. Thanks, Joe. Joe says she likes the color direction. Piety, sacredness. I mean, there's sacred callings to the unholy. What an interesting idea, huh? No, I'm not a proprietor of devil worship. I just think it's interesting because I don't think the devil exists. So I think it's interesting to worship something that doesn't exist unless you're worshiping a facet of human consciousness or nature, the barbarity of nature, and maybe it's natural to consume potions. Or maybe you're out in the woods and you're starving and you're hallucinating from the hunger. And then you see a mushroom and you just put it in your mouth and then it just makes you trip harder or something. You see visions, uh, shamanic tradition type stuff. Power of the mind. It's amazing how many people survive for long times in the desert without food and water, and how long they can go for. And I think it's 3 days without water, but somehow I heard, I've read stories about the long range desert patrol in Africa in 41 to 44. And these long excursions into the desert where there's no water and very, very little shelter. Joe says 3 days without water, 2 weeks without food is what I remember, but could be wrong. Do you remember the Edward Sharpe and the Magnetic Zeros music videos? I always liked Desert Song. The music video was pretty cool. Tripping in the desert. I think Catholicism should embrace drug culture. I think it would help their numbers, their dwindling numbers in the Catholic Church, if they actually gave out the hard drugs to the congregation and said this was God. I think then the congregation would believe. Instead of the New England Catholics I grew up around who are like, yeah, nothing really is believable. There's some, pedophile on stage wearing some fancy capes who's may or may not be touching kids when he, ends the sermon. Joe says I didn't watch many of their vids. I recommend the Desert Song one. I think that's pretty cool. It's the trippiest one. It's a little low budget B movie, but I like it. All metaphorical and allegorical. Because I think Edward Sharpe and Magnetic Zeros is kind of a Jesus story, a hero's journey, a mythical trip thing. His arm isn't quite long enough. I think a long time ago, I think the early apostles were druggies, and I believe that from hearing Graham Hancock talk about ancient shamanic traditions and Russell Duncan Trussell, sorry. I was gonna say Russell Peters, but I don't even know who he is. Russell Brand, maybe. After hanging out with some hippies, man, I mean, of any group that seems to embody the teachings that at least I heard in growing up in the Catholic Church, it would be hippies. People smoking weed and grilling grilled cheese in the back of a 1970s Vanagon VW bus and saying it's all going to be all right, man. Don't trust the government, man. I mean, I can't imagine the apostles were like big into the Romans. I actually listened to a pretty fascinating uh, book called The New Rules of War right before this business with Ukraine kicked off. And New Rules of War was pretty thought provoking, talking about cyber and the domains of information. But the author, who was a former 82nd Airborne soldier, was saying that conventional war was over. And I think that this war in Ukraine proves conventional war is not over. You have to have every layer to be dominant. You have to have the conventional force and the psychological forces that work on all levels of communication to win the field. And the same way the Romans and the Judeans or Palestinians, whoever it was at the time, the Romans had the traditional force, Judeans had an asymmetrical insurgency, but they had the psychological will of the people. Like the idea of Christianity was so disruptive and revolutionary that it upset the entire Roman system. Along with the pagans, you had the pagans from the north and the monotheistic cultures of the Middle East, uh, with this vice like pressure on the Roman system. The Holy Roman Empire, I guess it's the Eastern Orthodox Empire, retreated into Istanbul and started anew there. Or maybe I should say continued their power there, but being severed off from Rome itself, which had been conquered by the Goths and the Visigoths. And my former coworker and peer John Schaefer could probably illuminate more about that. Right now, I'm listening to Jordan Peterson's Maps of Meaning, and it goes into myth and the importance of stories to, first of all, alleviating fear and creating stability. It goes into how the brain works, all the different components of the brain, the scientific components and lessons and things learned from plugging people and mice and other animals into scientific machines that can measure brain waves, and they figure out what different parts of the brain function based on different stimuli. I can't remember all the names, but it was pretty cool. Listen to. So, not bad. Let's flip the canvas. Probably almost an hour in, aren't we? Where we at, yo? 58 minutes, getting close. So I'm gonna throw in some gross colors, I think, and maybe I'll keep working on this another time. I need to swap my laundry and do some dishes. It's my objective for the day. Someone's messaging me. What you want? What you want? Staying time. Oh, my friend Quillis. Asking me about Top Gun. I am very excited about space jet movies. Space jets. I don't think it's space, but anything acceleratory. Airplanes. Okay, so let's throw in some colors underneath of this just to finish our thoughts. Because sometimes you get inspiration, you have a vague idea of a lot of different things, and you should write them down or put them down to paper. So first of all, I kind of want some dark cloak. I'm gonna go with a deep brown and a wide tom brush just to get some massing in here. Come up with the pink for the arms, faces, just to get started, just to get something. If you were going to be doing this for reals and for a serious client-based project, you probably should get a lot of reference characters, actors, clothing, friends, pictures. Pose your friends in different positions and use them for a photo reference. I want this one character to have red hair. I was, believe it or not, I went and saw Riverdance last week in Wilmington, Delaware. My sister got tickets and wanted me to come along. And it was interesting, but there was some shockingly Irish people. So I just they had some weird spell like songs that they sung. The instruments are kind of strange and different. Dancing's kind of cool. Very fit people. as you can imagine. River dancers. Some incredible leg muscles. Goblin Witch. Goblin Witch with her bottle of spirits. Jug of poison wine. This is the green bard, and this will be the blue bard. You might ask, Tom, what is the significance of the green bard and the blue bard? I don't know. Just came off the top of my head. I like it. Seems very Renaissance-y, Renaissance festively. For there to be a bunch of bards in primary colored outfits. I do like that Volgamut at the Maryland Renaissance Festival. It translates into having a good time. Volgamut. Something like that. Maybe this master of arms wears red. After the god of war, Mars. What if we have one character wearing white? The penitent. Is strong contrast in the middle. The White Witch. Purple and pearls for JoJo. On the Witch of Levitation. I could see this being a project I'd spend a lot of time on. Like this could be a 30 or 40 hour drawing. It has the makings of it. It's got some kind of story. It's got some interesting characters. It's got an activity. And some landscape. Interesting. What if the trees had these like glowing veins in them? If the trees ran red with the blood of those who came before. It's like the Sleepy Hollow tree. I love that. I loved the Sleepy Hollow movie with Johnny Depp and Christopher Walken. Tim Burton, I think. Drew's been messaging. Sorry, Drew. Drew says your knowledge of history has gotten to help your art, more realism in the fiction. Yeah, Drew, I realized working on history games that if you start with a real subject, you don't have to come up with as much. It's actually less work to read about something that already happened and create a story from it than just to invent a whole new thing. So it's always better to. I find it just a little easier. It's a shortcut to start from the real, what really happened, and then elaborate on it. A history storyteller who I really appreciate is called Atun Shea. Atunshei, and he does these really interesting stories about the truth of the witch hunts in New England. I think he's from New Orleans, and he does a bunch of great history shows. This is his page, Atunche, and he has like these funny stories about the Civil War where he argues with himself. I just think these are hilarious. Like he plays a rebel and a Yankee, and he's talking to himself as if he is the North and the South, debating what actually happened. But then he also has the Witchfinder general character, where he does a really good impersonation of a New England accent, a colony accent from the 1600s, and I love his in-depth storytelling. Lung, I love this band. Lung is a pretty witchy pagan band, and they put on quite a spectacle. I took my sister Molly to go see them in L.A. 2 years ago, and I recommend anyone check them out. Everyone, please give good thoughts and vibes to my sister Molly. Her daughter's in the hospital and really, really struggling right now. Loves to draw. Kind of one of the reasons I wanted to draw today is thinking about my niece Cassidy and my sister Molly. What else did Drew say? Drew says, plus I love hearing about it. Drew says Riverdance cool. Don't know why, but I kind of like the flip version than the other. Yeah, it's kind of, I don't know. Maybe the composition's a little bit more open. It kind of brings people into the left to right. Maybe it has something to do with the poses invite. If you're a left to right reader, maybe there's some directional lines that make more sense. Joe said, "Woo! I hope you get to do more on it." All and then Drew says, "All good, smart man." Thanks, Drew. Thanks you. Dustin likes the stream today. Thanks, Dustin. I had the pleasure of hooking up little Corinne with a drawing pad, and I'm hoping to see more of that work, Mr. Dustin. Let me know and send me artwork as it is made. The first is twilight, the second is night, and the third at the end of the day. I was out in Santa Fe in Denver with my dear friend Lauren, and she was saying, Tom, how do you remember so much stuff? And I say, well, I listen to podcasts and I eat. And I think there's something going on where if I'm talking or learning about something and I'm fueling my body with food, it's like helping my brain write that down. It's like fat is the ink that the brain writes its memory with. I don't know. I listen to podcasts and I draw. I was talking with coworkers on Tuesday about the difference between engineers and artists, and Greg Thompson, a Mike artist I used to go to school with and now work with. We listen to podcasts while we create our artwork. There's a split in the brain. I can listen or I can talk with one half of my brain and I can draw with the other. So I think that allows me uniquely, or maybe artists in general, or people who are like this. Maybe one in five people or one in three people can do this, where they can listen and be productive at the same time instead of one or the other. I always had a hard time in school listening to the lectures by itself. I had to doodle. I was doodling along with taking notes. I had to keep the creative side of my mind active all the time, or it kept pulling me in this kind of ADD direction. So I wanted to pay attention. I wanted to be making stuff. I wanted to be drawing, or drawing was how I processed because I'm a visual thinker. gonna be some really interesting opportunities for lighting and shading here too. We don't have a primary light source is going to be the fire, right? So if my career was about around doing real serious type things and real type things, like dangerous type things, if I was a doctor or a policeman or a nurse, you really need all your attention focused on that job itself. Otherwise, you'll injure yourself or hurt somebody. Like if you're a welder, it really requires all your attention. Otherwise, you screw up. But in the art world, like screwing up's okay. You're just making art. Maybe art might just be the byproduct of an extremely unsatisfied mind. A mind that looks out into the universe and says, there needs to be more here. There's not enough. Whereas the mind who looks out and says there is enough might be minimal and less inclined to make images, but more inclined maybe to make spaces or to clean up spaces and to be more minimal. The neurodiversity of our civilization is just incredible. I think about education as a form of mind control in a way. Like culture is a way to, I don't know, seduce people into a way of life in a positive, maybe a positive way. Really good food is a great way to attract people to your way of doing things. I feel like I have not made my best work yet. I've done some incredible things as part of a team. Working on Civ 5 was probably the peak of my life, but my personal work has not peaked yet. Through these demos, I'm exploring and I'm learning that there's a lot more that I could be doing. The pandemic for me was a time of reflection. I feel like she's adding red, maybe strawberries and mushrooms. Because why not? Strawberry mushroom wine potion. First at twilight, the second at night, and the third at the end of the day. Joe says, I learned that when you tell people to picture a light, people who can imagine pictures, pupils will change size even without actual light. Fascinating. People who can't picture things, their pupils don't move. Thought you'd like that tidbit. I do. Speaking tangentially of engineers, Joe says. Drew says she looks like a strawberry and mushroom type lady. Yeah, doesn't she? How you doing, Drew, man? You having a good weekend? I watched Dune again while I was out in Denver, and what a just stunning visual motion picture. All the costumes, the expanse of the architecture, the vehicles, just everything about it is so beautifully done. Like every frame is a painting. Like you could take that same film and just stretch it out 10 times and have it on a wall in a gallery. An 80-foot wall. First is twilight, the second is night. At the end of the day. Tonight, gonna go see my friend's cover band, Poster Nutbag, down at the Firm Brewing Company. If anyone watching is in the Maryland region and is got nothing going on, go see some music, drink some pints while the government still lets you. How about Team Ukraine, huh? I'm rooting for them. It has been impressive. One of the last streams I did was on war. I was talking about some of my thoughts on war, not knowing that a war was coming. I suspected there was going to be another conflict. I didn't know what it was going to manifest as in the Ukraine. And I joked with my brother. Yes, my brother Rick, who's in finance and economics. So, Tommy, what do you make of this? And I said, I didn't think, and I don't think anyone thought that World War III would be fought by the Ukrainians against the Russians. It's a very strange world war because the rest of the world, is supporting one country's effort to fight an old enemy of freedom and democracy. It's a criminal nation of barbarians. It's interesting. We're drawing this magical, mythical scene here, and I think it's funny how the Ukrainians have taken up calling the Russian invaders orcs, like it's some World of Warcraft enemy. Like the Horde has come. Now I know there's a lot of nerds over there in the east of Europe. Video games are popular. Myth is very popular. Dancing to TikTok is very popular. Drew says the Boba Fett series kind of reminded me of Dune. Indeed, indeed. Well, with that, if not for Frank Herbert's Dune, I don't think we would have had Star Wars. A lot of stories about Star Wars being inspired by Dune. It's pretty evident. I mean, so it goes so far as even to use spice. Like George Lucas lifted the idea of spice from Frank Herbert's Dune, being this desert drug that's extremely valuable in the universe. That is in Star Wars and it is in Dune. It might be the same spice. This psychedelic, powerful, powerful drug that is key to the lore of the Dune universe. Potions, man. I used to think potions were just a myth. And now you got medicine and injectable feel good drugs. Let me get some of that love potion, huh? He's calling me. Getting updates from my family about my poor niece. The E. coli is real. Thank goodness there are some medical potions that science has created to alleviate pain and suffering and to encourage healing and recovery. I got a black magic woman. I got a black magic woman. I got a black magic woman. Turn your back on me, baby. Turn your back on me, baby. Turn your back on me. Something like that. It's the Dark Priestess of Purple. That's what this character is all about. Ghostface. Ghostface killer. I was thinking about what kind of potion this would be, and I think it would be Ghost Potion. What's Ghost Potion, you ask? I think it makes you see ghosts. Commune with the dead. And by commune with the dead, I don't mean actually commune with the dead. I think it means that you create a simulation in your mind of the entities that you had met in the past. And this mental simulation allows you to have a conversation. The same way you have dreams. You're practicing conversation, you're practicing interaction with a simulated consciousness. In a way, it's a way to talk to yourself, I think. What do you think? Drew says, sending positive thoughts for your niece. Thanks, Drew. Joe says, the Duniverse. That's a good way to say it instead of the universe. The Duniverse. So creative, JoJo. So clever. Me and Maddie K watched the comic stand-up Doug Stanhope. I thought Doug was going to be a goofy. I mean, I don't like his appearances on Rogan so much. I don't really get it. Like he just seems like a has-been wash-up. And then I watched his stand-up last night, and I was like, oh, he's really smart. Kind of like a Bill Hicks type, but he's been on the road a long time and abuser of drugs and alcohol. But a very bright mind who has just poisoned himself with drink. But I kind of get his act now, and I'm amused by it. So I don't know how much of his act is the character he's created versus who he actually is. So I'm going to go back and watch his appearances on Rogan, and I might appreciate them more now. What do you think about this? So I think I got a decent composition. We've laid out a lot of our ideas. We made some really big decisions. I'll have to. The colors are pretty local right now, and I would mix in these colors a little bit more with each other because we have very much purple, white, black, red, blue, and green. And I'm gonna have to maybe in the next piece work some of these colors together and make them less local and more circular while building up the background and developing the faces of these characters. So compositionally, how do we feel about? Let's flip it one more time back to the other image direction, and here we are back the other way. And I agree with Drew. Is actually I think it actually is better flipped the other way around. This isn't bad. But what is my eye doing? If the composition is this way, then my eye is coming up through the bottom of the blue, coming up through the blue of this bard character, and then up the arm of the instrument, and then up and over through the vines, and then down the hook and this guard character, this paladin. Not paladin's the wrong word. Man of arms, I should say, to the white witch who is dropping the ingredients into the kettle, and then the kettle is coming up through the wine into this villainous dark witch, and then circling down and around through the drum of the drummer, and then up the tree, and then back, and then up and over into the flying kettle. So I do have this flowing eye movement through the piece, so there is a bit of a path that's taking me on a journey, and maybe I can accentuate this path with more magic and light beams and uh, line weight, and these are things that you can all think about when you're creating a composition with multiple characters with maybe a complicated story. But we're going to go back and flip it because I think Drew's right, and the flipped might be a better way to start with it. So and then the same path, but just a little bit different. It comes in through the left or through the bottom, and then around the drummer, and then up, and then through the kettle and this pour, and then up through the magic. So it's the same path but backwards, and then up, and then over, and then down. So it's kind of a wild ride. Getting back from the right back to the purple witch is a bit of a leap. So I would think about what's some kind of light or color to bring the eye back towards the middle from the bottom of the blue bard. Maybe I have whitish or lighter pants here. Maybe a stripe, maybe striped pants, and that kind of carries the eye here. So think about that. Think about moving the eye around. It's going to be fun. Doing an obstacle course, doing a maze. The eye tracking through a maze. It's discovery. It's labyrinth. It's thought provoking. It's storytelling. The eye moving through an image is the narrative. So I hope that was fun for you all. It was fun for me. This came out. This is a little bit more interesting than I initially anticipated. And I hope it inspires you to come up with something cool and interesting too. I want to give out a shout out to Catherine Souza, who is an artist, Micah alum, who does some mythical kind of paintings and stories. And thank you, Joe. Thank you, Drew, for tuning in. This was a lot of fun. Drew says, I see this path like an infinity symbol. Yes, sir. And Joe says, flipped is for sure better. Oh, Joe also said, my only difficulty with Facebook Live is that I can't minimize the mobile app and keep watching. But I like getting to watch Tom drawing. Thanks, Jojo. Glad you like Tom drawing. I like Tom drawing too. I like Joe drawing too. Have fun when you stream next too. Check out Puzzle Teeny Time on the Twitch if you want to follow some entertaining puzzle time. And Kiki Cat is pretty cool. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you all next time on the Tomcast. Bye bye.